We are back with another video on Ringer. And to start off this video, let's talk about the coin door. The coin door is going to be set up differently on each Ringer. It sounds like the earlier ones had a slot for nickels or dimes, and then the later ones had 2 quarter slots. And mine actually has 2 quarter slots that's set up to give you 2 credits per quarter. And when you have credits, or when you have your slot set up to quarters, you actually need a make or break switch for your credit switch where the back 2 blades are in contact, and then when the coin drops, this rotates counterclockwise and it'll close the front 2 sets of contacts while opening the back. Now on the coin door there are the wires for the dime circuit. That should be the blue wire that's taped up here. And you can set dimes to 1 credit or 2 credits. And then there's also a nickel wire in there too. I think that's the white and blue wire that's taped up in there. So you might have a different setup where if you had nickels or dimes on that coin chute, you would only need a normally open switch. But this closed part of the 25-cent circuit is actually important if you have your machine set up to give you more than 1 credit per coin. So if you have it set up for more than 1 credit per coin, so if you're saying 1 dime is 2 credits or 1 quarter is 2 credits, that is controlled by the jumpers on the bottom panel. The jumper back here is for dimes. This would be 1 dime is 1 credit, and then 1 dime is 2 credits. And then for a quarter, you can adjust it all the way from 2 up until 5 credits per quarter. And when you have this set up for multiple credits per coin, when you drop a coin through the chute, it's not going to reset the game. What it should do is it should activate either the 10-cent relay and hold this in briefly while the score motor spins half a revolution, and then that will give you 2 credits for that dime. Or if you had it on quarters and then you hit that switch, you'll do the same thing and give you however many credits you have it plugged into there. Now, if you do have it set up on dimes, but you move this jumper over to 1, it's going to be the same as dropping a nickel, which means that 1 nickel equals 1 credit or 1 dime equals 1 credit is going to be an instant reset on the machine. So if you have multiple credits, it should activate the 10 and 25 cent relays accordingly, and then that will just put credits on the credit unit that you could then use up by hitting the start button. But if you have it just as 1 nickel as a play or a dime as a play, then once you drop that coin, it's going to activate the coin relay and it's going to start its reset sequence. Now for this bottom panel, again, I've taken this all apart and cleaned it. The switches anyway. The wood itself is kind of gross. But there's just 2 screws that you can take out. And then there are Jones plugs that you can remove. 3 sets of Jones plugs there. They're all different sizes, so they can only be plugged in one way. And then you also have to do something with the AC wires that go all the way up and to the power switch. And you can take all those out and pull that switch down. What I like to do is just put a Molex connector in there so that I can just unplug that, take those screws out, and take the whole panel out. A lot easier to work on this on the workbench than in the game. But for other things around here, those are our credit adjustments over here. There is one other, I'll call it an adjustment plug here, but this is for the motor. This is the control motor. It spins this way, so it would spin clockwise from this perspective. But if you were trying to get your adjustments right on a particular switch with the service jack in the left position with it on, once you bump this by hand, that hold-in switch, which is the top one on the first cam, it's actually the 0 cam, I think, on the schematics, but the top one is going to instantly spin the motor and try and get it back to that reset position. So if you're trying to see what your switches are doing, it's hard to do that because the motor is going to instantly kick on and try to correct itself. So what you can do is take that out, or if you move it over to the right position, you'll notice there's no wire coming out of there. This is the same as disconnecting the power to the motor. Then you can carefully rotate this by hand and then see what those switches are doing if you think you have one out of adjustment. So this is kind of a motor on, motor off power switch here if you're trying to service it. So if you have no movement from your SCO motor at all, make sure that that is in the correct position and it's making good contact. Now we have a fuse bank over there. Make sure those are the correct values based on the schematic. Capacitors, the 1000 one is for the DC coil circuit, and then the black one, which is 1500 on the schematics, is for the charging circuit. So when we go through, we have different relays back here. We have the cutoff relay, the extra shot relay, the engage relay, ringer relay, and then play control relay. And then the game over. So when the game starts up its sequence, the game over relay will need to go in. The player control and the engage, that goes back to what's happening on our wheel. So when our horseshoe unit's at the 0 position in those first couple clicks, when our wheel is in contact with the momentum wheel, that is when the engage relay is going to be pulled in. And then once that goes away after the first few clicks, power transfers over to the play control relay, where all of the charging circuit stuff needs to happen, where there's a switch on here that needs to stay closed. And then as that charging circuit is going, it's going to be pulsed. Well, the cutoff relay will be pulsed by the horseshoe relay, which is going to keep clicking this. And as long as those pulses keep coming, that charging circuit made up by our capacitor and resistor is going to keep this held in. And once those clicks from our momentum wheel are infrequent enough, this is going to release this relay and it's going to close that switch. When this switch closes in accordance with the player control that's being held in, then that is going to rotate the score motor and tell the machine that that shot's over and it's ready to go on to the next one. There's a one-page description of this in the manual that's actually pretty good to help you wrap your head around how that recharge circuit needs to work. And then across the front here, we have our start relay. So that's going to pull in during our start sequence. Our lock relay, this is always going to be on. You'll notice that this is the newest coil in here because the factory one had burned up. It's up to you if you want to actually replace this coil. It doesn't need to do anything except for hold itself in. So another way to defeat that is just to wedge this open, or excuse me, wedge this closed, or you could permanently bend those switches so that they're always closed. And then we have the coin relay. This is what gets energized once we either drop a nickel or dime if it's 1-to-1, or if we hit the credit button when we have credit units on the wheel. And then this is our second coin relay. So there is another way, and I didn't mess around with it, but I believe this is if you want to, instead of doing one coin as 2 credits, you could do 2 coins as 1 credit, and it kind of goes through there. There's also some other circuits that have normally closed switches on there that is important to the gameplay as well. So even if you don't have it set up to do 2 coins as 1 credit, there's still important stuff on this relay. And then this is the timer relay. And one thing you'll notice on mine is when I was first playing it and comparing it to the videos that are already on YouTube, once the horseshoe started to slow down on the back glass, other people's machines had a longer dwell time before that reset procedure started the next throw. And mine was actually pretty quick, and that led to the next throw having a few bonus hits initially because my machine was resetting before this wheel calmed down. And if this is still moving, it can close that switch and advance the horseshoe unit on the next throw accidentally. So I made sure that all my switches were clean, and that helped the situation improve. But what I did to make it better is I increased the capacitor that was on the charging circuit from 1500 microfarad. I went to 2200. Then another thing I did is to make sure that this timer relay stays in for as long as possible. There's only one switch on here that needs to close when that relay loses power. And I found by unhooking the spring, it actually allowed the relay to hold itself in longer. Now, that's probably an okay solution for a home setting, but if you had this in an arcade, you'd want to make sure that nothing came loose here without that return spring. So I released that spring and then upped my charging capacitor, and that gives me a longer dwell time in between throws. We'll take a look at the schematics next.